Put those blessed hands together one more time. Amen. 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 1 Samuel chapter 31. I really do hope that you would go ahead and really support that project. It's just an investment. Amen. If you can give Gladys Knight however much money you gave for her tickets. Amen. I ain't mad. Listen, if it was Frankie Beverly Mays, I would have been there with you. Amen. So just Gladys Knight ain't my thing. Amen. If that's yours, cool. Amen. So you can support her and us. Amen. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. But let's be a blessing. We believe that what God uniquely does here, and I always tell people, I don't just say it because it's our church. God has afforded me the gracious opportunity to travel throughout the world preaching and teaching, and there is no place to worship like Tabernacle Baptist Church. And so I'm grateful. Brother Trey does an amazing job. My musicians, our choirs, they do an awesome job. Man, these are some of the baddest musicians this side of Helpful, and they're faithful, and we appreciate them. We wanted them to show how much we love them. Also tomorrow, on Monday and Tuesday, Summer Breeze Revival. Make sure you're in the building. I promise you, you do not want to miss it. People are like, who gonna be there? Just come. Do I fail you? I try to get y'all the best. You never know who may roll up. Amen. But I promise you the word is going to be important. We have special guest artists, and we want to see you there for us. All right. 1 Samuel chapter 31. I'm concluding today, and it's a heavy message. I'll be frank with you. It has made me moody all week long. I always tell people that's why you pray for those who carry the word, because before you hear it, I've had to wrestle with it all week long. And one thing that when you really, truly are in what you do, you can't divorce yourself from carrying it. So, you know, I'm always having these thoughts, and whenever God gives, because if it don't touch me, it'll never touch you. And so the highs and lows, if you think you get cut up on Sunday, just be with me Monday through Saturday. You get cut up all week long, right? And so today's heavy because I'm going to deal with something that we don't normally talk about: mental health, suicide. So I know it's going to be a heavy message today. So I need your prayers. I need you to be honest. Okay, this is not a message for judgmental people. I need people to be honest in this moment, because I'm going to hit some real spots today. If you can't say amen, at least say ouch. That's all I'm asking. And you never know who you're sitting next to and how important this word might be for them. 1 Samuel chapter 31. I'm reading from the Message translation, and here is the word of God. The Philistines made war on Israel, and the men of Israel were in full retreat from the Philistines, falling left and right, wounded on Mount Gibeah. Philistines caught up with Saul and his sons. They killed Jonathan, Abinab, and Malchishua, Saul's sons. The war was hot and heavy around Saul. The archers got his range and wounded him badly. Saul said his weapon bearer, who was his armor bearer, "Draw your sword and put me out of my misery. Let these pagan pigs come and make a game out of killing me." But his weapon bearer wouldn't do it. He was terrified. So Saul took the sword himself, fell on it. When the weapon bearer saw that Saul was dead, he too fell on his own sword and died with him. So Saul, his 3 sons, and his weapon bearer, the men closest to him, died together that day. For time with these hours, I want to conclude our series on insecure. I want to talk about it didn't have to end like this. Lift those hands toward heaven and say, Lord, speak. We need to hear. Maybe seated in the presence of the Lord. It didn't have to end like this. A few weeks ago, the world was riveted in the loss of who many would consider celebrities. Kate Spade, Anthony Bourdain passed away within days of each other. What made it even more intriguing, these who were considered celebrities, global icons, if you will, the way they died. They died at their own hands, committed suicide. Many people began to wonder, how bad could it be when we would look at them as people who perhaps have accumulated a lot of worldly wealth? We'll have your accessory adorn many women throughout the globe. We'll see you as a popular television host. Could things be that bad that you would be willing to take your own life? And let's be honest, it brought it to national attention, but it's been something that, if we be honest, we've heard about in our own lives. Maybe it's not as publicized as other things. I know, especially within our community, there's other pressing issues police brutality. We talk about the systemic institutional things that we wrestle against. But there is a silent killer that we're not addressing publicly, even though we all face it every single day. This issue called mental health stigma. The reality of depression, grief, that can be so overwhelming that could cause people to want to take their lives. Don't take my word for it. Statistics back that up. We're in unprecedented times, not just in our community, but our young people are disproportionately affected by it. It is suggested that the largest demographic on the rise for suicide is African American youth. CDC did a study in 2015 that chronicled children between 1993 to 2013 and found out the numbers doubled of suicide between children the ages of 5 and 11 years old. 5 years old, contemplating taking their lives. 11 years old, contemplating taking their lives. Numbers even staggering. The types of suicide, hanging by suicide, has tripled among African American young men. And even though we still have a large number of white people who commit suicide, the third largest killer between the ages of 15 and 24 in the African American community is suicide. And it's a challenge. Matter of fact, it is so pervasive that they've now chronicled what they call slow suicide. When people will do certain things to couple with their depression that is ultimately leading them to a slow death. They call slow suicide addiction to drugs, addiction to alcohol, gang activity, stuff they know is going to end in a tragic way. One of the challenges, my brothers and sisters, is that most people don't even know the symptoms of these depressive states. Some of us could be living in the house with someone who's wrestling with depression and don't even know it. They give you such clues like monitor if are they more irritable now than they've ever been? Have there been change in their sleep patterns or eating patterns? Or even what they call social withdrawal. That you can be in a place with someone and not know that these thoughts are running through their minds. What makes it even dangerous nowadays, especially in this culture we live in now, is that you can live publicly but be dying privately. Seem to put your best life up, turn your L's into lessons on social media, but in your private life, slowly dying on the inside. And I will admit the church has not always functioned this well, especially in our community, because we as African Americans, as black people, we strong. We done survived slavery. We done survived Jim Crow. And so we make it a badge of honor to talk about how strong we are. But yet we've oftentimes poo-pooed people's depression. We've moved it away as if it's a sign of personal failure or some personal moral ineptitude. And so we do stuff when people say they're hurting or when people have some idea of their depression. We'll say such churchy stuff like, just pray about it. And tell people to just get on with their lives. The challenge is, we'll be honest, that kind of theology and pedagogy is a narrative that pushes people all the way to the edge, because it is possible, as Judas teaches us, to go to church and take your life after church. And so what do we do if we're going to say it's real? I mean, let's just go ahead and be honest. All of us, perhaps you ain't going to tell it because I've learned depression does not care what car you drive, does not care what your income is, does not care what kind of suits you put on. It can affect all of us. You could be in an entry-level job or be on the penthouse. It can happen because life can be difficult. I wish I could stand to tell you that you won't have trouble and trials, but no, life will come in, and how you respond to it. And if we're not careful, there'll be periods when you want to give up. You're going to want to tell God, stop the world and let you get off. Why I feel this message is important and why it has weighed heavily on me this whole week is that I think that too many of us have learned how to go through the motions. We've learned how to function in our dysfunction. We've learned how to make it seem like everything right, even though we know there's stuff that's wrong. And there's danger today, my brothers and sisters, in having that thought that you can just live your way through some stuff. To just think, well, I'll manage anyhow. I want to tell you that not allowing yourself to go through the process to get the help that you need can end up being destructive. That I know you're strong, I know you're great, but there's sometimes you're going to need some help. Because if you're not careful, and if you misassume and misidentify your own helpless state, you can end up like Saul in this particular passage. We come to this 31st chapter. It's been an interesting journey. And as we go through it, we've been a lot with Saul, from chasing lost donkeys, hiding behind baggage, to being the first king of all of Israel. It has been a roller coaster ride. And I will admit to you, he's been an intriguing and interesting character. But I am drawn to his conclusion. Because in the span of all he's done, his reign is coming to an end, about 40 years. Yes, his replacement is on deck. But yet in just a few verses, we get the epitaph of Saul's life. After all he's been through, after all that he's had to endure, the Bible gives us the final wave of his life. He takes his own sword and falls on it. To be that high and to fall so low, he takes his own sword and he falls on it. This began to hit me because I want to approach this from a different way. I've been giving you theology for most of this series. And I could talk about, yes, Saul's disobedience. We could talk about his whole symbolism and how he's a transitory piece, a warning thing. But I want us to make Saul more real today. Because I know for many of us, for these 7 weeks, you've made Saul some other entity, some character in the Bible. But today, if no other sermon that you heard me preach on Saul, I want to make this as real. Because if we'll be honest, we got some Saul thoughts in us. That life can be so bad. I know you wish you would have turned some things around. I know that you wish you weren't as distant, but because of his external battle with the Philistines and his internal disconnect with God, Saul felt he had only one thing left to do. And that's take his sword and fall on it. So I come today, I want to have a conversation. I wish that I could talk to Saul. My aim, my brothers and sisters, is hopefully as I'm talking to Saul, I want to talk to you. Because I too stood there. I'm not standing preaching this as some entity. I've wrestled, I've had struggles, I've had moments where sometimes that thought has crossed my mind. I wonder what it would be like. There's been some down moments, and perhaps I'm in here by myself, and if so, that's cool. But there have been some times I have hit rock bottom myself, and depression has gripped my very soul. But in those moments I've learned, I've come to tell you that you've got to remember the love of God. You've got to remember the love of others. But also I've come to help you understand, yes, we need you to pray, but we need you to get some help too. I know, my brothers and sisters, that name popular, and I know you think that all I got to do is wave a magic wand over you and anoint you with some oil, but there's some stuff help is good for. There's some stuff. I'm not saying that prayer, yes, we're going to pray, but there are times when you need to be able to understand that this reality of my life is true. I want you to understand that this stuff is real, and if we don't manage it, we could be like Saul. If I gave you the mic, you could testify. I still stand one of my dear friends as I pastored in Alabama, and I made my sojourn here to Augusta. I thought everything was cool. I was at his installation. I was in his wedding. I did all that only to hear he took his own life. This is real. And my question to Saul and to you, it doesn't have to end like this. I want to give you this word today. Your life is worth living no matter how bad it gets. That's all I got. I'm not going to rise it. I don't come to hoop to you. I come to really talk to you. Let's have a conversation. Because I really wish I could just sit Saul down in that moment. I wish I could travel to Gilboa. I wish I had a moment to talk to Saul. Maybe there were some things in this text, in this life, that we could glean. Maybe there's some precautionary things that we need to put in place so we don't have to end up like this. So you're interested? I hope you are. This is how we're concluding our story with Saul. Let me give you this first point. And we're going to put it on the screen. It's rather verbose. Let me just sum it up for you. I hope you write them down. But I've been changing this all day long. This sermon will probably not be the way I started out at 7:15. It definitely will not be how I do at 12:15. But let me share with you some things that I wish I could tell Saul. And I wish that I'm speaking to someone now to let them know it doesn't have to end like this. First thing I would tell them is I would let them know, don't let today's hurt make you forget yesterday's help. I would tell him, don't allow the hurt of today make you forget the help of yesterday. We come to chapter 31, and it's intriguing that what we see is Saul fighting against the Philistines. You're wondering why that's significant. Well, if you go back to when Saul was inaugurated as king, one of the main reasons that God acquiesced to the request of the Israelite people is that he needed someone to help them stand up against the Philistines. Then when you go back to the initial inception, even though God didn't like it, he knew that they needed some leadership against the Philistines. He knew that the Philistines would be a perpetual problem to the Israelites. And as we come to chapter 31, it has been 40 years, and Saul is still fighting the Philistines. I mean, here's the crazy thing, because I know there's some of us that assume just because you win a battle, that that's it. We assume that just because you had victory in an area of life, that you ain't got to worry about that no more. But this text gives us a cautionary tale that there's some stuff you just going to have to keep fighting your entire life. I wish I could tell you. And there comes some moments, I wish that I could be honest. Comes some moments, my brothers and sisters, I know that you think you have managed it. I know you think you won yesterday, but let me tell you something. If you're not careful and become too casual with your Philistines, it could end up getting the upper hand on you. Because here's the challenge, my brothers and sisters. He has defeated them before. God has given him victory before. But just because he won yesterday, today's a brand new fight. I'm here to ask you a question. Because here is the reality where most of us don't want to be true, because you just assume just because you mastered something for one season of your life, it's not going to come back. I wish I didn't have to be the bearer of bad news, but some stuff you're going to always have to fight. Can I ask you a question? What's your Philistines? What's the thing that no matter what you do is always got your number? What's the thing no matter what you do, no matter what you consider to have, you always got to make sure you keep your head on a swivel, because just when you think you got it mastered, the Philistines will still show up. You know my story. I'm amazed. Hero of my life is my mother. Just recently, she celebrated 18 years of sobriety. She was addicted to crack, heroin, and marijuana. She had a major addiction. And that's one of the reasons I was adopted by my grandparents. So recently, she just celebrated 18 years. And I was so proud of my mom. I was just so excited for my mom. Proud of her. But here's the crazy thing, that when I was talking to her, and I always try to hit her up, I always hit her at times, and she always like, I'll call you back, I'm in a meeting. So we asked her, she tell me, what kind of meeting you was in? I was in NA meeting. I was at this meeting. I was at that meeting. I said, Mama, you're going to have to help me. You told me you 18 years sober. You haven't touched these drugs in 18 years. My question is, Mom, if you 18 years out of it, why are you still going to meetings? And she blessed me because she said, you're right. I haven't been in it 18 years, but I'm not foolish enough to think that it won't come back. So I do what I have to do. Y'all got to help me to make sure I keep myself on guard, because just because I won yesterday don't mean it won't come back. I wish I had time. And see, why most of us get messed up is you start to take your enemy for granted. You start to think that it'll never come back. And Saul made the same decision. But here I'm here to remind you, if God helped you before, do the same thing again. And in this text, an enemy that he would have to perpetually fight has caught up with him. Matter of fact, here's what's crazy. The text tells us how it caught him. That in the midst of the fight, the archers of the Philistines shot their arrows and wounded Saul. Now, you know why archers are important in the military, especially in this time? It would be synonymous to what we have nowadays called snipers. See, what made archers and arrows effective in that day was that you didn't know when the arrow was coming. You didn't know where the arrow was coming from. You could just be walking along and all of a sudden get stuck by something unexpected. In other words, what caused his woundedness in the text was that he got hit by something he wasn't expecting to happen. I wish somebody be real. See, some of us can handle stuff we can see. You smart, you intellectual, you can tell some stuff, but there's some stuff, the reason it caused you to get in the place you are is because you wasn't expecting this thing to happen. You were just going through life and you thought you had everything together only to be hit by an arrow. I wish some people to be real because some of us have to be honest. There was some stuff, Pastor, I just wasn't expecting. I wasn't expecting the loss of a loved one. I wasn't expecting to be laid off the job. I thought I had stuff together and I had my life planned out. And what caused Saul harm, he got wounded on the battlefield. And there's the truth. I wish I could tell you, you won't have arrows your way. You will. I wish I could tell you that unexpected stuff won't come. It will. I wish I could tell you that if you plan right, that you'll get everything together. But even in our blessed plans, some stuff will come. But I would tell him, I would tell Saul, listen, I know you wounded, but don't forget where you are. See, the place he was wounded at was a place called Gilboa. Gilboa is significant if you read the Bible. It was a place that Israel had won many victories. While Deborah was judged, they won in Gilboa. While Gideon was judged, they won in Gilboa. Matter of fact, there was quite a few victories that Saul won at Gilboa. I would tell Saul this, I know you're wounded, but don't forget you're still in a winning place. Ooh, I wish I had time. Boy, I'm preaching better than y'all responded. What I'm here to tell you is that I'm not saying you won't get hurt, but just know I'm hurt in a place where I know God can still make the difference. I'm here to tell you that I know you got unexpectedly caught off guard, but you're still in Gilboa. Touch somebody and tell them you might be wounded, but you're still in a winning place. Don't allow your today make you forget your yesterday. I'm here to tell you. So, don't forget the help you've had. Well, there's something else I see in here too. And the second thing I would tell Saul, as I summarize that second principle, I would tell him, make sure you got the right people around you to give you the hard truth. It's here. Notice his response to his woundedness. He looks around and he assumes it's over. He said, man, they're gonna get me. And I do not want them to do me any kind of way. So he talks to his weapon bearer or armor bearer and tells him, man, take my sword, run it through me. I'd rather die at your hands than at their hands. And the text says the armor bearer does nothing. He's terrified. There have been much speculation. I could tell you who most scholars say that it is, but let me tell you who the armor bearer is not. Is not who used to be his armor bearer. His armor bearer used to be a shepherd boy by the name of David. David loved Saul. He was loyal to Saul. And in spite of Saul's jealousy towards David, David always protected Saul. But because of Saul's jealousy and envy, it forced a disconnect to David, who would prove more valuable in chapter 31 if Saul would have kept him around. But at this moment, while Saul is going through, David is miles away getting his stuff back out of Ziklag from the Amalekites. And in this moment, instead of having someone who had his back to tell him the hard truth and not to give up, he has someone in his life who's scared. Matter of fact, some have suggested this man by the name of Doeg the Edomite, who literally is loyal to Saul to a fault. He does whatever Saul wants him to do. Matter of fact, he's part of that assassination plot against 40-some priests that Saul enacts through Doeg. And notice how Doeg responds. He's scared in that moment to encourage Saul and allow Saul to take his own life. I wonder what would have happened if David would have been there. And when Saul came and said, man, it's over, if David would have said, bro, come on, man, we can still got time to get through this. Now, I know it's hurting. I know you're in pain, but we gonna make it through this. See, it matters who speaks to you in your time of woundedness. Y'all ain't helping me here. It matters who is able to speak words of encouragement to you because in this season, you don't need yes people. You need truth people. people. You need people who's going to tell you, lift up your heads, O ye gates, and ye lifted up, ye everlasting. You need some people that's going to tell you, I know you're hurting, but we can fight through this. I wish I had somebody can testify. I'm grateful that in my wounded moments, I had the right person speaking to me and telling me, you can't give up now. What happened? What happened? Because, challenge of the text, by not having the right person around him, it didn't just cost Saul, it cost that person as well. What do you do when there's people you depending on for help, but they end up hurting you? And sometimes your silence is as bad as your bad advice. Don't let me hurt and you not try to help me. This ain't the season. I just need you praying from a distance. I need you showing up and bothering me and irritating me and nagging me and telling me, come on now, we got to get through this. Come on now. This ain't quitting season. Well, I'm just going to stay here. I'm going to live at your house till we get yourself together. I ain't going home until you get your mind right. Y'all got to help me. You need some right people to help you when you're wounded. It's danger. It's danger, guys, when we don't. What happens with people you depend on that you think got your safety in mind, but they end up, he's my weapon bearer, but he ain't pulled out no weapons. I read an interesting article this week, USA Today. It says, why are U.S. mothers dying? Caught my attention. I was intrigued by it and talked about the large number of women who transition after giving birth. And come to find out, they said that number, which was pretty high and significant, could be cut in half if the hospitals that they were giving birth in took right protocol. It talked about how they did a survey, they did research, and they began to notice that some hospitals had begun to cut corners. And because of them being lax in certain areas, infections came in and began to infect the women who trusted the hospital to help them give birth. And so they end up dying because they were connected to a place they should have trusted for help, but it ended up hurting them. All because they didn't follow the right protocol. I would tell Saul, get some people in your life that can tell you the hard truth. Here's the other thing I would give him. Let me summarize his third principle. Third principle I would tell him is I would tell Saul, it's okay to be hurt. Get some help. It's interesting because when we read the text, Saul was at a bad place. Matter of fact, chapter 28 tells us he was so far disconnected from God, he went and saw a witch to try to get godly advice. Don't have time to deal with that. Read chapter 28. It's intriguing. So here in chapter 31, he's already at a bad place. But if you read around verse 3, it tells us, Dr. Brown, that on that battlefield, Saul was not by himself. Not only was his army with him, but also 3 of his 4 sons. Jonathan, who's been a good protagonist for us in the journey of Saul, and 2 of his other sons. And in that battle, Saul's 3 sons get killed. Now I can imagine, I know we have painted Saul as whoever he is, but can you imagine seeing your children get killed on the battlefield with you? And what I would submit to you, perhaps what hurt him more in his woundedness, which exasperated his pain even more, is that he witnessed his loved ones die and couldn't do nothing about it. But here's the trip. He's King Saul. Kings ain't supposed to cry. Kings ain't supposed to hurt. So in this moment, he bottles up his grief. And I would submit to you, the more pain he had was not from the wound of the arrow, but from the loss of his sons. And maybe that's why some of us are struggling today, because you've experienced some loss and you have psychoanalyzed your mind, people have told you, get over it. They told you, come on now, you still got to move on, and have been insensitive in your time of grief. Y'all ain't going to help me now. It's been 10 years, I will admit to you, I still struggle with the loss of my grandfather. And my theology of grief shifted the day of his funeral. And because I had done funerals before, Reverend Richardson, and I've been part of that churchy lingo, you know, around people, patting them on the back, telling them they in a better place, and all that stuff, until it was me sitting on the front row. Having a nightmare, the worst thing I could think of, and people walking by and slapping me on the head. It's all right. They're in a better place. It's okay. And I didn't want to hear none of that right then. And I wish I had some real people. I didn't want them to tell me it's going to be all right. I needed a moment where I could just cry and lay on the floor and have me a pity party. I needed some time, some people to tell me, get it out, Charlie. It's going to be all right. Just get it out. It's going to take some time. You just do what you got. I wish I had some real people that sometimes I just needed to grieve. And let me help somebody. It ain't a sin to cry. It ain't a sin to be hurt. Y'all ain't hearing me now. Matter of fact, I think that it's cathartic to cry. I think it's divine to cry, because you can't cry. God said, go ahead and cry. I'll wipe every tear from your eye. Keep crying. I keep wiping. I wish I had somebody here. That's why I thank God. He can handle my hurt. He can handle my grief. He can handle my pain. It's all right to be hurt. See the problem? I would tell King Saul, stop thinking you got to be strong by yourself. And some of us in here now hurting because you're trying to be strong. Some of you want, that's why you so irritable. That's why you so mad now. They don't even mean what they said. They ain't even look at you funny, but you ready to go fight somebody. Why? Because you're hurting and you ain't dealing with your hurt. Y'all ain't helping. You've learned how to function in your hurt. But if you hurt, you ain't going to be healthy for the kingdom. I'm trying to help you. And I understand, listen, that's why it takes more than prayer. You need some help. And I understand our community, we struggle with the health profession. We have a suspicious eye. We still think about Tuskegee Airmen experiment. We still struggle with some of those issues we deal with. And yes, we have a stigma with mental health. We don't want to sit on nobody's couch because less than 3% of psychiatrists look like us. You know, we funny about telling our business to anybody. But let me tell you something. Just as God gives you a pastor, he can give you a psychiatrist too. Y'all ain't helping me. You listen. Don't get it twisted. I know. And listen, be careful who you let counsel you. Just because somebody read a scripture don't mean they have spiritual insight to be your counselor. Stop letting any and everybody talk you through. No, get you somebody trained and qualified. Y'all ain't helping me here. Get real help. Some of us be trusting anybody. Just, well, you know, she's in my Sunday school class. So what? The Bible said, try the spirit by the spirit. Use your discernment, baby. Vet them. Get some help. Get some references. Y'all ain't helping me, but you need some help. And that's what happened. And that's why it's dangerous now, because I've seen it. We live in a very peculiar time. You know how it is. We can look like everything's good on the outside and be hurting on the inside. We're in the most isolating time of our entire history. That's what they say. The way it is now, that you can have friends but not really be friends. You can have people you talk to and never talk to them. You know what I'm saying? You be in everybody else's life and ain't had no kind of contact with nobody. And I'm here to tell you that at the end of the day, we need some help, Saul. And y'all ain't gonna like this, but I'm gonna tell you the truth. Some stuff you're gonna have to endure your way through. It's a process. I wish I could tell you could just go to one counseling session and all your troubles will be evaporated. I wish I could tell you you could have one prayer. No, some stuff is going to be a process. It's going to be a day by day by day. But you got to learn how to commit to the process to get yourself through whatever you're going through. Y'all don't like it. So, get some help. Because sometimes we think just because we're king, we can't cry. Here's the thing I would tell him. Final thing I would tell him here, and this fourth thing I would tell him. I would say, Saul, just know what you do affects more than you. Because Saul, there's some people that really love you. As you read the ending of chapter 31, they get his body and his sons. And they do some, war was horrible. They decapitated them. They left them hanging in a place of dishonor. But the Bible says word gets to a place called Jabesh Gilead, about 15 miles away from this place. And they hear what has happened to Saul and his sons, and they send their best men to journey 15 miles, fight through the Philistine army to recover the bodies of Saul and his sons. They risk their own lives to get the bodies of Saul and his sons. And they bring them back. They give them a proper burial. And the Bible says the last verse in all of chapter 31 of verse Samuel, they fasted for 7 days. Now, I know you were asking the question, why is this significant? Why are we hearing about Jabesh Gilead? Well, this may not hit you, but let me trigger your memory. Early on in the beginning of Saul's reign, the first victory Saul had as a warrior for Israel was to free the people of Jabesh Gilead. For 40 years, they've been indebted to Saul. For 40 years, they've loved Saul. Saul was crazy. Saul did some crazy stuff. But Jabesh Gilead, them folk loved them some Saul. Because he has helped them early on. For 40 years, they have been waiting for a moment to help him back. For 40 years, they have been waiting for an opportunity to bless Saul back. And in this moment, I would have told Saul, Saul, I know you got your detractors. I know you got your haters, and we love to always pinpoint them. But I would say, Saul, in this season, don't forget there's some people that love you. There's some people that care about you. There's some people that don't want to see you be hurt. There's some people that want to see you live. And I don't know if that's my word for somebody, because sometimes we get so fixated on those who are against us that we fail to remember there's some people that's for us. We get so fixated on all of our problems that we don't realize there's some people that love us, that would die for us, that would, I wish I had some people. I'm thankful that in my worst time of woundedness, I had some Jabesh Gileadites who said, I still love you. And I would tell them, you don't have to do it, because there's some who still want you to live. Everyone standing, I'm done. Play softly, I'm way over my time. It can happen to the best of us. That thing will sneak up on you and you won't even be like, man, where did this come from? And I don't like being fake. I try my best. Our church, we try to be real and authentic. It happens. I've dealt with it. I've had those moments. As good as God has been to me, I've had those times. Publicly, things going well, but you never know. That's why I always tell people, be careful how you judge people. Careful how you assume about people's life. And we'll be better off if we were more empathetic towards one another, because you never know the struggles everyone goes through. This thing has sat on me so hard. I told my staff, I was like, yo, I just can't release this, because I know how real this is. I know what it is to be a public success but feel like a private failure. I know that feeling. I know that to see the church grow and yet you go home and don't want to say nothing to nobody. Cut every light out. I don't want to hear nothing. Been there. Low points of life, driving down the road, saying, if I hit that pole, what would happen? And if I die, who would come to my funeral? Been there. But I'm thankful that in my moments of despair, I had the right people that came and were able to help. That's why I'm a big proponent. Get some help. Because Lord knows I was in a dark spot. It was surgery. I was just, ooh, my head was gone. And they hit me up out the blue. I don't even know why I even answered the phone. Because I was just at that point. I just didn't want to talk to nobody. Because here's the crazy thing. See, you can function and still be hurt. I was preaching, but I was still hurt. Burying people, hurt. Doing baby dedications, hurt. And I know I ain't the only one. You going to work, hurt. But someone got through to me and said, look, man, I can sense something. We need to get you some help. And I could have been spiritual in that moment. No, the Lord got me. Shabba-babba, oh, the Lord got me. But wisdom got in and said, you know what? Maybe this is the Lord bringing help. Best investment I made, going to sit on somebody's couch, getting some help, talking through some things, putting some stuff in order. I believe in it. Pray, and the Bible is clear. Pray and watch. It's duality of our existence. And I don't know who this is for. I didn't come. I know I got to go, but I told him I'm going to be late all day because I really felt this in my heart, because more people than not struggle with this than want to admit it. And I want to help you today. I'm going to come just pray with you. I want to pray with you today. If you're saying, Pastor, I feel this, because Lord knows there have been some I'm in an overwhelming situation right now. And as much as I want to say I got it together, there have been some thoughts. Come quickly. I want to pray with you. I'm done with that.